we did it, and you're sitting there looking around and you can see, Africa spread out below you, and you're just like, oh my God, we did it. And it's like, I survived. I did it. It's, it was amazing. I mean, because I never would have thought that I would climb a mountain that high. And just because it wasn't something that was on I should say, my bucket list until we started doing research. I was like, oh yeah, let's do this. But up there, it was just like the exhaustion went away for that little bit. And you were just, you're cheering each other on and, high fives and all that stuff. And it was like winning the game.
Today we'll be doing the hardest thing that we cover on Active Travel Adventures. That is climbing Kilimanjaro. I normally don't cover adventures this difficult. However, it's on so many people's bucket list. I thought it was important for us to get Damon on and tell us about his experience. I can't wait to share with you, so let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. I'm super excited to share with you Damon's experience on climbing Kilimanjaro. Damon went with my affiliate, Active Adventures, who, as you'll recall, offers my listeners a discount with the exclusive promo code, which you can get by email me at kit@activetraveladventures.com, and I'll send it out right away to you, whatever the current code is. And don't forget, now that Active has merged with Discovery Bicycle Tours and Austin Adventures, that code works for all three companies. So be sure to put that in when you're checking out and save yourself a little bit of cash. With that, let's get started with the interview. I've asked Damon to come on the program today to tell us about climbing Kilimanjaro, which is it is the hardest thing we've ever covered on the Active Travel Adventures podcast. Welcome to the program, Damon. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kit.
Before we get started, I think we'd like to learn a little bit about who are we talking to? Are you just like a regular person that climbed Kilimanjaro, or are you some super athlete, or can you tell us a little bit about who Damon is? Maybe your age as well?
Yeah, sure. Just so people know, I'm 51. I'm retired. I'm not an athlete, but I do run regularly. So I did have a little bit of prep for this hike. But most of all, I just spend most of my time taking care of our home and things we have here. I do a lot of things like I like to hike and fish and kayak and of course travel, which my wife and I spend a lot of time doing.
Good. So you're a regular person just like us then?
Yeah, pretty much. I would hope to think so.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Because like I said, I try to cover things that regular people, if they train, can do.
Right.
And so, and Kilimanjaro, like I said, that's at the upper end of the difficulty level that I cover on this show. We don't do Everest or anything like that. So you've climbed the pinnacle of the hardest one. So let's start with what made you decide you wanted to do this?
Well, like I said, my wife and I like to travel, and Africa was one of the continents we haven't been to together. So we decided to do that. And then we found the trip with Kilimanjaro, and we also did the safari that goes along with it. But it just seemed like something that, when we first originally planned it, we planned to do on our 50th birthday, but then COVID hit, so we pushed it off. But it was just like, this is something we wanted to do just to experience it. We like to hike, we like to do all that sort of stuff, but we're not technical climbers or anything like that. And it was kind of that one chance to do something like go to a highest peak without having to invest in all the time and training into getting all the technical climb stuff. So, and it was just one of those things. It's like, we just need to do that.
Cool. Had you done any adventure travel before in your travels?
Oh yeah. We hiked the Annapurna Trail in Nepal. We've done the Mount Blanc Mastiff in Europe. So we've done a lot of hiking and stuff like that. We've been to Antarctica and done some hiking in Antarctica. And so it is something that we enjoy doing. So active travel is what we actually prefer to do. We like I said, we like to do biking and kayaking and hiking. So we look for companies that do stuff like that to fit our plans.
And have you always been adventure travelers, or was that something you discovered later like I did?
My wife has always been that way. Like I said, I was in the military for 20 years. So my traveling was all work, but I enjoyed traveling. And then when we got together, she had done some of this and adventure trips. She did Machu Picchu. So, and I liked the idea of that. In fact, one of the first things we did together as a couple was go to Nepal to hike Annapurna. So it fit in what we like to do. I just never had the opportunity to travel specifically for that in my earlier years, but we both have been interested in that for a long time.
And you went with my affiliate, Active Adventures. Yep. So shout out to them. How did you find them? And is that who you did some of these other trips with as well?
Yeah, we are frequent flyers with Active. We like their company. My wife had found them. Like I said, she did Machu Picchu with them. And she had also gone to New Zealand with them. She knew about them, and I joined her for Nepal with them. And ever since, they really fit the bill of what we like to do. Now, we went with different company to Antarctica because Active doesn't go there, but other than that, we do like their company. And that's one of the reasons we discovered them through her. And we've just enjoyed their setup ever since.
Yeah, obviously I'm a fan too. In fact, I'm doing Machu Picchu in about 2 weeks.
Oh, nice.
So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, so in fact, all the places you covered, I have covered on the show before, and I'll put links in the show notes for people that are interested in them. But yeah, they just do a good job of they give you the whole package.
They do.
Not only is it a great experience, it's great food. The guides are fun and very skilled and fun. And you're going to have a great time.
Yes.
So let's drill down a little bit about exactly what the process is of hiking Kilimanjaro. So let's go a little bit day by day, talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to ask you some more things about details like food and crew and all that kind of stuff. That sounds
great.
Okay. So you land at the Kili airport near Arusha, right?
Correct.
And so tell us about when you finally kind of meet up with everybody. What happens?
Well, we came a couple days early to get acclimatized, basically, and the hotel that they had chosen for us was great. It was a wonderful place to sit and relax for a few days before taking on something like Kili. The food there was great, and then we were there for 2 days before we met up with our active guide, and Mel was there. Great, she met us for dinner the night before we left, and we got a surprise. We expected to be in a typical group of 12 to 14 people, and it turned out to be only 4 of us.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a nice, really cozy little trip. But they got together with the team there in Tanzania, and they sat down with us the day before we left, and we went through the typical briefing of what to expect, and they were very clear. They answered all of our questions, and it was a really good start to the whole adventure because they were very thorough, and they went through all of our gear to make sure that we had enough stuff to make it up to the top of the mountain. And the funny thing is that literally all 4 of us traveled together, and all 4 of us, our luggage did not arrive until the night before we left.
Oh dear.
So just before we did our briefing, our luggage arrived, except for one person's, and her luggage didn't arrive until, and this is something we'll talk about later, but until the 5th day of up the mountain.
Wow.
But they were able to get her luggage to her.
And that's a good point. Well, you make 2 good points there. Number one of the hardest things about getting to Africa, it's a brutal, brutal flight there. Mm-hmm. So doing what you did, taking a couple days there, when I went on safari, we went to Istanbul for like 3 days just to get some of that time change out of our system and break up the trip a little bit. So that's really, really smart to do. If you're going all this way, you're spending all this money because this is an expensive trip, that it's good to just cough up the money for a few extra days, I think, on both ends. And doing the safari like you did is a great way to polish off your trip. But also that luggage thing, when you're doing adventure travel, that could be a big problem if you don't have your gear.
Right. But one of the things, once again, to shout out to Active, they are really good on that because the company they worked with had access to all the equipment we needed when our stuff didn't arrive.
Oh, okay. So they have a backup plan for
right.
that. Yeah, because I ran into that when they lost my luggage. They didn't lose it. My luggage went to Ghana when I went to Rome to head to the Dolomites. And fortunately, I'd gotten there 2 weeks early, so the luggage had time to find me before I had climbed the mountain.
Right. And between us sharing equipment and what they could provide, everybody had everything they needed to make it all the way to the top of the mountain, even if none of our luggage showed up.
Okay. Well, you just took my stress level way down on that. because that would have made me twitchy. So, okay. So you're starting off there. So in Arusha, your elevation is just under 6,000 feet. So you've gotten through your first night, and now the next day you're starting to hike, right?
Well, we were there 2 days early, but yeah, once we got there,
or with the group when the trip itself starts.
Yeah, the next morning we got up, we hopped in the trunk, and we went to the Lemosho Gate entrance of the park. And yeah, it was straight up starting to hike because our first night was headed to a forest camp on the mountain. So we went from Arusha to basically about in 2,650 meters of elevation. I don't know the math, but yeah, we got to the gate. We sat down with the crew that we had because we met the rest of the crew, like some of our additional guides, because we met the head guide the night before, and then we met he had two guides that were with us every day, and we met some of the other team members that were the porters and stuff that were going to be helping us up the mountain. And so we had a small lunch there at the entrance of the gate while they did the paperwork and all the stuff that we needed to go do the finalization so we could do the trip up the mountain. And then, yeah, we took off hiking into the mountains, into the forest zone of Kilimanjaro. So it was straight to the hiking on the first day.
Yeah. So again, so it's a good idea if you can to get there at least a couple of days early. I want to make another point too. They're doing the Lemosho Trail, which is it's the trail that people have the most success actually summiting. There's lots of trails that people they want to save a little money and do it a few days shorter. It's really hard to acclimatize. So I like that Active chooses that trail, even though as hard as this trip was for you, you did the one where you had the greatest chance of success.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we chose it as well, because we wanted the highest chance of success, and it was good. We felt after talking to the crew and the leaders that we were going to make it.
Yeah. So day one, you're doing 4 miles, about 7 kilometers, and they allow like a half a day to do so. You've climbed about 1,800 foot of elevation gain and end the day at just around 9,400 feet or around 2,860 meters. So you're starting to get up there already.
Right. And we have done quite a fair bit of the hiking and stuff. So, but it seems odd at the start because they make you go really slowly. I mean, for people who think they're going to start this and, hike at a normal pace, even at that level, you can feel the altitude as you start the thing. And so your team members, your leaders, they set a really comfortable, doable pace that's going to serve you well as you go up higher in elevation.
Let me see if I remember my Swahili. Pole, pole. Wasn't that slow down, slow down?
Yep. Slowly, slowly.
Yeah, remember it's pole, pole.
Yeah. I hear that a lot.
Yes. And that's really important because, again, you're going through all this trouble, aggravation, expense. You want to make sure you have your best chance of climbing that. And now you're also in the forest too. Did you get to see any monkeys or anything cool there?
Not on the way up. On the way down, we did. So, but we had seen the monkeys in the hotel where we stayed at the night before, the 2 days before. They literally were running across the roof of our room the first morning. It sounded like a freight train going across the top of our roof. But going up the mountain, on the way up, we didn't. On the way down, we saw some blue sykes monkeys.
Cool. And is this forest pretty? I mean, is it something that's attractive, or is it just something that you're working on the goal?
No, it is beautiful. I mean, it's lush and green, and there's a lot of birds around. It's a little hard to see them because they're in and out of the leaves, but it is a full-on semi-rainforest. I mean, there's vines and big trees and underbrush, and it's a beautiful thing to look at. You definitely aren't just staring at the trail trying to get through it. You're looking around the whole time, and the guides you could point to a flower and they would tell you the name of it, both the local and a lot of times the scientific name. And they would also, a plant, they would tell you about the local history of the plant. Like one plant, they talked about how it was part of a ritual of forgiveness. And they described the whole thing. If you insult somebody, how you go through this whole process and you need this plant to ask for forgiveness. So it was a lot of that the whole way up through the forest region.
Good. So it's entertaining, beautiful, and so you get lots of senses.
Oh yeah.
All right. So that first day, that sounds like a good start. Then what do you do in the next day?
Well, we're continuing up the mountain, and we go from the forest zone. You start entering into the moorland zone, I think they called it. And it's kind of funny. You don't think about it, but as you walk along, you will all of a sudden just notice that all of a sudden the trees have gone and the bushes are 6 to 8 feet tall, but the landscape, the vegetation, I should say, just changes in a matter of a kilometer as you go up the trail. It's thick shrubbery type terrain, but it's still green and it's still full of birds. And we did see some lizards in that area. So we saw a little bit of reptile life. And it starts to work its way up. The incline starts to get a little bit more as you get into that area. Because we were headed up to Shira 1 camp that night. And that area is one of my favorite parts of the whole hike because you're in a collapsed volcano, basically. And I won't say it's flat, but it is probably the less incline of the whole thing. I mean, you could see for a long ways, and you got the sheer crater rim on one side and Kibo Peak on the other, the one you're trying to get to the top of. So it's just this beautiful vista of this volcano and this mountain that you're walking through. And it's not too harsh. I mean, the altitude, don't get me wrong, the altitude is there and you can feel it, but you're not doing, really steep grades most of the time. There's a lot of it, but a lot of times you're on a fairly gentle upgrade as you head towards Shira 1 camp. But I really enjoyed that part of the hike because of the views.
And that's also, I see in my notes here, that's also a World Heritage Site too. So it's remarkably beautiful. So it's not just you saying that, this is recognized around the world as one of the prettiest places. I should note too that the Lemosho Route is considered the prettiest route of all the Kilimanjaro trails.
Right. I really enjoyed walking through that part of the park.
So on this day, they're showing, again, it's a long half day, 5 to 7 hours they're putting in here, but you've gone 4 miles, 7 kilometers, and up another 3,150 feet, basically, or almost 1,000 meters.
Right.
And we're really getting up there. Now you're getting up. Now you're now officially higher than anything I've ever climbed.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close to as high as I'd ever been, too.
Okay, so now going on to your day 4. Now you do something a little interesting on this day. Tell us about that.
Right. And as you hear from your guides, a lot of times they'll say that the idea is to hike high, sleep low. So every night you either go over a peak during your hike and then go down to your camp that night, or like we did on this night, we were headed to more camp. We got to the camp, took about an hour break or so to relax, and then we did a separate short hike, and we gained about another 1,000 feet, I think. I can't remember exactly how high we went.
Yeah, it's just over 820, it looks like. Right.
And you climb to the top of this little peak overlooking the camp that you're sitting on, and you spend about a half hour up there just soaking in the views, because now you're in the zone where there's almost no vegetation. It's gone very rocky and brown, but you look back across the Shira Plateau and you can see all that and look down at your camp, and you just sit there and relax for a little while, getting acclimatized to the high altitude, and then you come back down. So it was a really nice, interesting hike. In that point, you can feel how your body reacts to that up and down motion of hiking like that, because you go up that 800 and some odd feet, you sit there and you feel, and you come back down, you can feel the refreshment of that change in oxygen levels and the altitude. And it's kind of like, okay, now I understand why they want to do the up and down and all that sort of stuff, because you can actually feel it in your body when you come down off that extra climb back to your camp for the night.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I've always heard that, climb high, sleep low before, and I knew it was to help you acclimatize, but I didn't really get that you would actually feel it.
Yeah. On this part of the trip, I was experiencing some slight headaches. I mean, things like that are to be expected. And once again, I'll say this, and I'll encourage anybody who wants to do this to be very honest with your guides, because they are there to try to make you successful in this, and they can understand what you're going through. And they will watch you very carefully, like they took your blood oxygen a couple times a day just to make sure you were getting enough oxygen in your blood while you were hiking as you got higher and things of that nature. But, I had some slight headaches, and our guide was like, okay, well, try to increase your water intake and see if that helps. And if, try your choice of painkillers, aspirin, Aleve, or something of that nature. And that day, climbed to that top of that 800 summit peak, and I could feel the headache. But when I went back down, it went away. So it really showed how that can affect you, that little bit of altitude.
Definitely. Yeah. And when I get over 8, then I'll start getting the mild headaches. And in fact, I did a show on how to train for altitude. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, because you're going to feel it. And some people, even the most fit person in the world, might get altitude sickness. So your point to tell the guide is super important. Did they give you any special tea? Because sometimes I've heard there's certain teas they like to have you put down that helps with the altitude.
Well, one of the great things that the food and stuff, I know we're going to talk about later, but that was great. And they did have that. They had your standard black tea, which I'm a very big fan of. I drink a lot of it. And then they also would do, if people were having problems, they would make ginger tea. And it helped a lot of, like I said, it was just 4 of us, but my sister-in-law was with us on this, and she enjoyed the ginger tea because it did help a little bit with hers as well. So they do have some things that they know will help with the symptoms of altitude.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I know they have all the tricks.
Right.
So cool. And I'm glad they're testing Euro 2 as well. That was on my question list. So I'm glad that's being taken care of.
Right. And we were all on altitude medication. We had chosen to take altitude medication because we had been to Quito in South America, Ecuador, and had felt the effects of it. We forgot to take our pills before we landed. We didn't realize it. We didn't think that Quito was at 8,000 feet or whatever it is. And we got off the plane and we're like, oh. So we'd learned from our mistakes in the past. So we've chosen to take the altitude medication, and that did help a lot, I believe.
Good. In fact, I'm bringing some to Peru with me for that same very reason, even though I won't be going near as high as you did.
Right.
Anything special about the Moore Camp Day that you want to tell us about?
Well, from my understanding, normally when you come to camp, your porters and your crew will sing you into camp every day. But because of COVID regulations, they weren't allowed to sing at the camps. I'm not sure exactly why that was, but that's what they couldn't do. But that was the first day we came into camp, and they were singing to us. It was pretty spectacular because you're just like, it's like being cheered in after a long race. It was really kind of uplifting to hear them singing, and so it was pretty. That was the first time they did that, and it was pretty special. I enjoyed that.
Cool. Very nice. Very nice. All right. So now the next day, tell us about that.
Well, the next day we were on our way to Barranco Camp, but on the way we had lunch at Lava Tower, which is a large formation along the trail. Unfortunately, you used to be able to climb to the top of Lava Tower while you were there, but they've since shut that down because people were knocking rocks down on other people, from what I understand. So, but it is a pretty impressive formation. We enjoyed the lunch there because we were sitting right underneath that, looking at it while we're eating and stuff. But there was another day of really pretty good altitude gain. We finally got to meet I can't never pronounce this right, Seneco Kilimanjaro trees. The one that people call the Dr. Seuss trees. Because they look so otherworldly. And so we got to come across them as we were on our way to our next camp. And they were really impressive. And once again, the guides were well-versed in the local fauna and flora. And they were talking about how you could generally tell the age of these things because of how many branches they had, about 20 years for every branch that pops out of the tree. And so some of these trees were 100 years old or more, they just didn't seem like something that would last long, especially in that environment. But they were interesting. It was cool to see them because that was so unusual.
And so I have here my notes too that your landscape's now pretty much a semi-desert and very rocky. So are they just like scattered, almost like this? I'm going to mispronounce the saguaro, the cactus that when you draw a cactus, like those out in the desert. So it's not like a bunch of them. It's like one's here, one's over there kind of a thing.
Yes and no. There were some clumps where there was 20 or 30 of them within like 100 yards in that sort of a clump. And then there were some that were out there all by themselves. but most of them we saw were in clumps. So I'm not sure exactly how they basically chose their places to grow, but they were varying on how they.
Maybe they block the wind for each other and kind of help each other to grow.
It's possible.
Because it's pretty tough up there, I would think.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of things growing up there.
Yeah, I hope you send a picture of those so we can put that on the website as well.
No, they were pretty. I can do that, yes.
Perfect. And then I'll have here that you're seeing the Western Breach in the breadwall. What the heck is that?
Yeah, the Western Breach is interesting because there was, if I remember right, there was a lot of snow in that area, and they had closed it off because you could no longer go up that way, at least at that time of year. We didn't have snowfall at all in our time frame, and we were lucky we didn't even have any hard rain. So we didn't have to deal with any mud. But the Western Breach was pretty interesting because it was, you could look up and you could see where they talked about how they used to climb the snow and the small glacier that was there up into that area to get to the mountain. And that was one of the routes. And that was pretty tough, a pretty tough route. But luckily we didn't, obviously didn't do that. And then we ended the day, honestly, I don't remember anybody putting anything called it the bread wall, but I do know that on the end of the day, our camp, we had the view of the Bronco Wall. And that's the one that has the kissing rock on it and that everybody talks about as being an interesting part of the hike. But it was a good day of hiking because you got to see these things. And there was actually, with the camp that night, there was actually a small river next to it going down through the valley before you went to the Bronco Wall, which was not huge. It was a creek, but it was interesting because it had been fairly dry the whole time away. And we learned that a lot of times this is where all the porters would get their water, and they would carry it for several kilometers to get it to the next camp because it was one of the only water sources up there. So those porters did a lot of work to make your trip comfortable.
So on this day, you did another up, and then you came back down again to camp. This is a longer day. So now you're showing 7 to 9 hours of hiking, 7 miles, 11 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone up another 1,300 feet, another 400 meters, but then you came down 2,300 feet or 7 meters. So now they're really trying to get you acclimated. So
right.
You actually went down a lot more than you went up today.
Right. And it was a long day. I mean, but once again, it's a slow pace. So other than dealing with the altitude, it's not, I won't say it's not strenuous because it is strenuous with the altitude.
I'd say liar, liar, pants on fire.
Yeah, I don't want to make people think this is going to be the easy day because it's not. But you would think that covering that time and that elevation gain and that elevation loss, it would be a lot more tiring. You were tired at the end of the day, but I expected to be a lot more tired because it was going to be one of the long days. But don't get me wrong, I slept well that night. But I also don't remember being on the trail going, oh God, I can't take another step. So it was one of those type of things.
Gotcha. All right. So the next day, now you're not going very far, but you're getting up pretty high. So the next day, you were up at almost 13.5.
Right, because this is the day you climb the Bronco Wall and get to the top of that and go through the Kissing Rock and everything. And for me, this is one of the funnest days of the hike because it's the adventure side of the adventure hike. I mean, the whole thing's an adventure, but this is the closest you're going to get to any sort of technical climbing on this trek, at least on this trail. And it's a lot of bouldering where you're climbing up. The trail goes up kind of rock faces and you're squeezing between rocks to get into little things, and you're looking for little handholds and footholds to lift yourself up to the next level. And it's not terribly hard. And the guides are, they're like, step here, step there, hold that, put your left foot here, put your right, they're very helpful when it comes to getting you to the safest and the best path up these rocks. But it was, I guess it was a change from the walking along a trail in the mountains. It was climbing rocks. It was going up fairly steep rock faces to get to the next part of the trail. And I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun on that day. And getting to the top of the Bronco Wall, you're up there and you can see Arusha town and Kilimanjaro town and all the places around, depending on if the cloud cover is favorable for you. And you can see out all over Africa from the top of the Bronco Wall. It's stunning views. And before we left, we did some research, and everybody kept talking about how the Kissing Rock was this kind of scary place to go across. And I just want to tell my opinion on this is that it was no big deal. It was fun. And yeah, you pretty much had to kiss the rock to get past that part of the trail. But once again, the team that was with you, they were there to make sure you were safe. There was somebody there behind you in case you misstep to kind of, catch you or anything of that nature. But I wouldn't worry too much about the Kissing Rock if you're worried about that. You get to watch porters carrying 40 kilos worth of stuff walk around the Kissing Rock like it's nothing. So that was a very fun day. That part of the hike was really enjoyable for me.
Is there exposure that if you fall, you can fall off the mountain? Or is it something that somebody that's afraid of heights would have a problem with? Or just, I'm going to ask questions that people might want to know.
Yeah, it's a place where if you misstep, I wouldn't say you would fall down the mountain, but you're going to fall a decent distance. And it's rocky, and you're going to get banged up if you fall. Just imagine climbing over rocks and boulders in anywhere at any altitude. If you make a step, you're going to, even if you just slip down and hit your knee, you're going to bang your knee really good on the rocks and stuff. So it does take care. As far as heights go, some people might. I definitely don't have a fear of heights, but I also would say that when you're doing this, you're not really focused on too far from where you're at, because you're focusing on where to put your feet, what your next step is. So you're focusing on that 10 or 12 feet right around you. And your guides are there telling you in the tough spots, step here and stuff like that. So I would say that if you have a slight fear or fear of heights, that you're not really going to notice the heights because you're so focused on where you're supposed to be putting your feet. You're not looking around. And it's not sheer cliffs. I mean, so you're not stepping and you're going to go 50 feet straight down or anything like that.
All right. So it's something that's not really scary, but you just got to be careful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole trail's that way, but this is especially a point of that where you need to be careful.
Gotcha. One thing I'm hearing from you too, Damon, is that this is also a fun trip. I always thought of it as like a mental challenge, where it sounds like it's also a fun and enjoyable trip.
Well, you're right. It is a mental challenge. And that is one of the biggest things about it, is you just have to be willing to be able to keep pushing yourself forward on this. So yeah, you were correct about the mental challenge, but it is fun. I mean, granted, some of that comes with the group you're with, and we were with people we all knew and loved and had fun with, but also the team that was with us were very open to talking and laughing and joking. And so we had, I wouldn't say entertainment, but we had a lot of laughs on the trip. And like it was mentioned before, it was very informative. So you ask questions, they would talk and tell you all sorts of things about the area you were going through, the different zones and the different plants and stuff. So it was fun. It was a learning experience, but it was also a mental challenge because it's something I'd never experienced before, that, the altitude and the lack of oxygen type of stuff.
So going through the rocks was fun. So what do you do the next day?
It was kind of a quiet day because you're in the Alpine desert now. So there's a lot of rocks to look at, but there's not much else. There are some birds that are up there. There's the whole way up, you'll see the white-necked ravens. They're everywhere. We didn't see any, but according to our guides, sometimes they even come to the top of Ruhu Peak. So you'll always see the ravens. And then there's some smaller Alpine Shah, they're a little tiny bird, and a couple other different birds that you'll see there. But it was a long day and a pretty good, decent climb. But it was kind of relaxing because you could kind of just almost get into that meditative pace where you're just kind of going along, you're looking. There's nothing too much to take your attention away, but there's some beautiful rock formations and stuff. But depending on what you like to look at, for me, it was more of this is a kind of a good day, get the rhythm going, just feel the mountain and move along the trail and enjoy the company you're with.
Yeah, it looks to me like it's like your final acclimatization day, because you've got a big push tomorrow to summit, and also rest day because you have a killer day tomorrow. Tell us about the next day.
This is the one thing I think probably worried me the most. One, it's summit day, and two, it's an extremely long day.
I know, looking at it, it's very intimidating. So tell us about it.
Right, because we went to Barafu High Camp that night, so we got lucky because there's two camps at the end of day 6. You got Barafu camp or Barafu high camp. And they were trying to explain to me that only so many people can be at Barafu high camp because it's smaller. And it's the first come, first serve type thing there. So luckily our team was able to get there and got us to Barafu high camp. And that makes a difference because coming day 7 and the summit day, it takes a bit of work out of your day. So we got to Barafu high camp that day because between Barafu high camp and Barafu camp, there's this fairly steep rock face you have to go up to get to Barafu high camp. And if you don't do it on day 6 to get Barafu high camp, that's your start of your day 7 at midnight or 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. is to go up that rock face in the dark with your headlamps. So we got lucky. We were able to do that in the daylight. And it's not a technical or scary thing to go across. I'm just, the more light, the better as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, day 7, you get to camp on day 6. You sit down, we got there around noonish, and you have lunch, and then they send you off to bed. And you go to sleep, you try to sleep, do your best. And then they wake you up for dinner. You have dinner and then you go back to bed. And for us, about 11 o'clock that night, they come to wake you up and they say, okay, get ready. And luckily, a couple of days before, our team guide had us put on everything that we were going to wear for the summit day, which basically is everything, down jacket, windbreaker, base layer, fleeces, your gloves, both your inner and outer gloves. And they take you for a half-hour hike at night. And then they make sure you can use the restroom by yourself with all that gear on and get yourself back into the gear just for things of that nature. So you get all your gear on day 6 at 11 p.m. And you get out there, and midnight, we start going up the peak. And it's dark, pitch black. So all you have is your headlamps. And you start up going up the mountain, and you were walking slow before, but now you really do the pulley thing. You're just shuffling up the mountain. And there's good reason for that because the altitude gain is pretty amazing and you can feel it. But the whole way up, you're in the dark, you're zigzagging up the mountain, trying to get to
Stella Point.
Stella Point. That's the word I was thinking of something else. So in the dark, and you stop a couple times about every hour for a break, water, snack, and they really want you to do snacks on that time. And so we make sure you have good snacks with you. They provide well as well. But the cool thing about this, I didn't have my camera at this time because I had my camera. I should say they were carrying it because they limit how much you can carry up the mountain for reasons so you don't overwork yourself. And I have a fairly decent sized camera. So they were carrying it, but it was dark, so you really couldn't take pictures anyway. But the one thing I wish I could have taken a picture of was looking back down at Barafu High Camp from about halfway to Stella Point. All these little lines of headlamps from other groups coming up behind you, zigzagging down the mountain was a pretty impressive sight when you were up higher than them. So that was one thing I wish I could have gotten a picture of, but I didn't have a camera at the time. And then we stopped at Stella Point when we got up there, but it was still too dark to do anything. And then we moved on a little farther. We were able to see the sunrise. We hadn't quite made it to Uhuru Peak yet, but we still had a beautiful, beautiful sunrise. A little cloudy that day, so you couldn't see the actual Serengeti and the area around. It was just a cloud deck, but it still was absolutely stunning. And then we made our way up to Uhuru Peak.
And that's the summit, right?
That is the summit. That's your goal.
What did it feel like when you made it?
It's hard to explain. It was like we did it, and you're sitting there looking around, and you can see Africa spread out below you, and you're just like, oh my God, we did it. And it's like, I survived. I did it. It's it was amazing. I mean, because I never would have thought that I would climb a mountain that high. And just because it wasn't something that was on my bucket list until we started doing research. I was like, oh yeah, let's do this. But up there, it was just like the exhaustion went away for that little bit, and you were just, you're cheering each other on, and high fives and all that stuff, and it was like winning the game. but it was great. And you only get to spend like 20 minutes, a half hour up there because of one, the altitude, two, the intense ultraviolet rays from the sun, and three, they want to get you out of that altitude because it can affect people badly. So you get up there, you take your pictures at the sign, you look around. I caught a couple good panoramics of off the top of the mountain, and then you make your way back down the mountain. And for me, going down the mountain was actually harder than coming up because the way they arrange their trails is you go up one path and you come down another, so you're not, don't traffic jam on the trail.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's really nice because you don't have to worry about letting people pass or who has the right of way. But the trail down was a lot of loose gravel, loose scree. So you have to be really careful coming down the mountain because you can spend a lot of time on your butt because every step you step and you take another 6 inches of slide, or give or take, if you're not careful. They do their best to pick a good path, but there's some places where you just have to walk over a field of gravel and scree. So I would caution everybody worries about climbing up the mountain, but it's just as important to know how to go down a mountain. On the internet, you can find a lot of stuff. So look up a mountaineer that talks about going up and down and see how the techniques they use for going down the mountain as well, just to have that in your head when you're going there. Because for me, that part was one of the more difficult parts because, just trying to keep the balance and going down the mountain. I did fall down a couple times on my butt, but I survived.
Right.
Just a little embarrassment. You know how that goes.
When you are going down scree, generally speaking, it's fairly 45 degrees. You're going to fall on your butt. You're not going to fall on your head.
Right.
Particularly when you're going downhill, if you lean back a little, whatever way you lean is the way you're going to fall.
Correct.
And if you got sticks, you can kind of maneuver that. And so you fall on your butt. That's what the padding's for.
Exactly.
At least my padding. That's my excuse.
Yep. Oh, the only thing I worried about falling down either direction was, sticking your arm out to catch yourself and landing on something that wasn't stable, or, that was my worry. My butt, I was like, yeah, I can handle it. It's done this before. So.
Right. I want to point out what you accomplished, though, because we just kind of breezed by the fact that you went up 4,000 foot elevation gain. So you started at 15,000 feet, ended at 19,341 feet, or almost 5,900 meters high, most of which in the dark.
Yep.
It's just, that day is a brutal day.
Yes.
And another thing I wanted to point out too, you were able to go to the high camp, but if you stayed at the Barafu, if I'm saying that right, the Barafu camp, which is lower, their goal in the morning is to hit that Stella Point at sunrise. But you had the advantage of starting higher.
Correct.
But you got to Stella Point a little bit early.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, like I said, which camp you get to stay in depends on the luck of your team getting there in time to get the high camp or the low camp.
And there's pros and cons to either one.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I think I'd pick going to the high camp if I had, if that was an option, just to make that summit day a little easier, because that's one tough day. At elevation on top of it. It's a hard day if it was flat.
Right.
But the fact that you're up at that elevation and doing that kind of a climb, and now, is the path fairly, like when you're doing that climb, is it fairly gradual, or do you have like a big incline, a big ascent, and then it levels big? So what is kind of the, if I were to draw a line of what the elevation looked like?
It's a pretty steady, constant, steep climb with you do a lot of switchbacks back and forth up the mountain.
Okay, that's helpful.
On the way up, there's not a lot of up and down. It's basically just up, but it's all switchback. So you don't feel it as hard as if you were trying to walk straight up it, obviously. But it is a solid climb. There's not a lot of times where you're on either semi-level or a downhill slope on the way up. So be prepared for a constant slog up the mountain. And the biggest thing is that, we got up to the top of Ruhu Peak about 6:45 in the morning on July 4th. And the day wasn't even going to be close to done because we got back down the mountain, had lunch at high camp, and then we trucked all the way down to Millennium Camp. So it was an 18-hour day of hiking.
You go up 4,000, then you come down 9,000 feet.
Correct. And trust me, like I said earlier, when you start coming down, you can feel the difference in your body when you get down there to that camp that you're like, oh, I can breathe, you know. But it's a really long day, and it's done for you for your safety basically, because you've been up that high, you want to get your body out of that as quickly as possible, and so it's a good thing, but it makes for a long day.
And then the next day, you're still going down some almost 5,000 feet.
Right.
So tell us about your final descent and getting down to Arusha.
Well, yeah, the last day you get there, you take off, and like for us, we got headed down from Millennium Camp down the hill. It's still it's like you said, it's a steep drop, but once again, all of a sudden you start seeing the changes. But now all of a sudden you're back in the moorlands where the higher shrubbery, and that's where we got our last view of Kibo Peak Mountain, where we're at, because the clouds rolled in. That was one of the days that we only had a little bit of rain, but we were in the forest, so the trees caught most of it by the end of the day. So we didn't get soaked or anything, which was good, but the trail was muddy. So one thing I would say is, if you're on the edge about bringing gaiters, bring gaiters. They're helpful the entire trip, no matter what the weather is. But yeah, you went down the hill, and like I said, it was obviously easier because you're going to Helen Hill, but we had to be very careful because the trail was muddy and wet. But we still made good time all the way down to the final gate. But we got back into the forest, and so we got to spend time once again in that lush green forest. This is where, like I said, we saw the blue Sykes monkeys, and we saw the black and white colobus monkeys. They were both in this part of the trail. And so we got to enjoy them, seeing them, a couple of different birds that we hadn't seen since, and that sort of thing. And then the last part of the trail was the actual a road that came up to the end of the Millennium Trail. So you were walking down a road till you got to the exit gate. But it was a nice way to end the hike because you got to come back into this beautiful forest again.
Very cool. How'd the shower feel? And how was that dinner?
Oh, that was a great shower. Yeah, after 8 days of washing out of a bucket and hand sanitizer, that shower was something else. We were back at the same hotel. We started the Sierra Negro. I think that's the name. I have to look up the name again, and it was a great shower.
Tell us about how you all felt at your dinner, and then we'll go into what kind of stuff you ate on the trip.
The dinner. Here's the thing. The dinner was great on the way back, but the food they served you on the hill was just as good. Well, the dinner was just a matter of sitting there with the awe of realization that you just climbed to nearly 20,000 feet of elevation, under your own power, and for us at 51 years old age, or 50, 51, there's a range of us between 49 and 51 at that age. And it was just like, wow, I cannot believe we did that while we were sitting there eating the dinner. And it was almost awe-inspiring. You almost couldn't talk about it because you're just sitting there going, I can't believe we did this. That is so amazing.
Now, you went with the four of you you said you all knew each other?
Right.
And we're all able to summit?
Right.
Very well. Very good. Very good.
Right. It was me, my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, and my wife's best friend. So we all went together on this trip and all summited. We all made it to the top and had a great time. But yeah, it was pretty amazing that sitting back at the hotel and just realizing what we had done.
And what a great shared experience that you all can talk about for the rest of your lives too.
Yeah, for us, the running joke is the 4th of July is going to mean a total different thing.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Now you'll have to have a dual celebration.
Yeah, so it's a dual thing for us as Americans. So
very exciting. And I know you went on safari after that. If we have time, I'll ask you about that. But let's go down a little bit into some of the other things that people will be interested in. Let's talk about food. You said you ate some good food on the trail. What are some typical things, or tell us a little bit about that?
Even at the hotel and on the trail, they start the meal with a soup, which I didn't have a bad soup the whole time we were there. I mean, it's vegetable soup, there's squash soup, and they had a whole tomato soup. They had a whole range of soups that they would serve as kind of your start of your meal. And they were all great. I mean, And then we found out that soup is not a traditional Tanzanian start of the meal. It's something they do for the tourist industry. But even though it's not something they do typically in their homes, they are really good at it. I'll just say that. But there was always, we had some sort of meat, either chicken or beef, and there was always vegetables, good vegetables, varying things, peppers, onions. They do a lot with that. Green, like bell peppers or capsaicins if you're English. I think there's capsaicins. Anyway, breakfast, there was always on the mountain, there was always porridge, which was amazingly good. And they always served it with things like they had raisins to put in it or honey and other things to put in it. Sometimes they bring out mangoes or papaya that you could put in your oatmeal. One day we had crepes for the main part of the breakfast, and another time they'd have varying types of eggs, scrambled or something, or boiled or something of that nature. The food they provided on the mountain was amazing, considering that you have to carry everything up with you. So if you're worried about what you're going to eat, you're definitely not going to eat freeze-dried food. You're eating good, proper, well-prepared food with a good variety.
And another thing that I like Active for this trip is there's a lot of tour companies that take advantage of the porters system there, and Active is going to make sure that they're properly taking care of their crew. And so I'd like you to talk a little bit about the crew and what they do for you guys, and just give us some insight.
Oh, the crew were amazing. I mean, first of all, here there's four of us, five if you count our Mel from Active Adventures that were part of the team. And we had, I think, 15 or 20 porters. I have to go back and count to carry all of our stuff up the mountain. And so there's a big team with you, and that doesn't count your lead guide, your two assistant guides, your camp manager, and the cook. So you've got a big team going up with you just for four people. So I imagine if they had a full complement of people or tourists, that would be much, much bigger. But when you get to camp, your tent's set up, your sleeping bag and your mattress is already set up and waiting for you. Your bags are in your tent, your big bag, because you carry your day pack with you all the time. You walk in and they greet you and everything. And then the next thing you're in your tent, because you change into camp clothes, like more comfortable shoes and maybe some warmer clothes because you're not moving, so you're not as warm. And while you're in your tent, you'll hear a knock on the tent, and here's your camp manager with a big bowl of hot water for you to wash your hands and face or whatever you want to wash while you're changing. You don't have a shower, but boy, that feels good after a day of hiking. And then you go to the mess tent. They usually, our crew, before, if we had a while before lunch, there'd be tea or hot water because they had like cocoa and Milo to drink, tea. And they would always have popcorn for you to snack on while you were sitting there. And so we could sit there and talk about the day. And like my wife likes to journal. She likes to write down what we did on the day. So she'd sit there and journal while eating some popcorn, and we'd talk and look at pictures that we took that day. And then, of course, you'd have your meal, and they would bring you the meal out in stages. Like I said, you usually start with a soup for dinner, and then you have your main course, and then there was usually some sort of dessert. Like a lot of times it was fruit, or other times they'd actually make some sort of pastry that was really good. I couldn't remember what it was called, but it was really good. So they did so much. Like for ours, they actually carried this may sound trivial, but it was really nice. They carried a chemical toilet and a small toilet tent with us. So in the middle of the night, you didn't have to struggle 100 yards to get to the long drops that were there, the permanent toilets. It was just outside your tent. And you knew, especially since there was only four of us, you knew there wasn't going to be a line waiting for the toilet too often. So, and they did all that to make sure you have a good, comfortable trek. And it was really, really appreciated.
And let's talk about, I assume you got some kind of a packing list. Is there anything, a special tip or some advice you can give us as far as clothing or general packing?
Well, like I said a little earlier, Gaiters. I never wore gaiters before, and we were kind of on the edge of whether to get them or not. And we found a fairly decent price pair. We said, "Oh, fine, we'll just try them." But you're walking through, even up the hills, a lot of rocky, dusty areas. I've hiked it quite a bit, and inevitably a rock gets in your shoe. And never had a problem with that the whole time. And then on the way back down when it was muddy, I mean, it saved your pants and stuff. So I would highly recommend gaiters, even if you're not a fan of gaiters, because I think they were very helpful on the trip. As far as clothing, yeah, they do have a packing list, and I would say follow that as closely as you can, because we did follow the Active Adventures packing list and we had no problems. So if it's on there, bring it if you can.
Well, they've done it 100,000 times, so they know what they're talking about.
Right. I mean, exactly. These teams know what it takes to get to the top of the mountain. And look at your puffy down jacket that they recommend. Make sure you have one that has the fill that they ask for or better, because it can get cold up there. We got lucky on the day we summited. It was no wind, no rain, except for the low cloud cover. There was no clouds. We were listening to people coming down the mountain the day that we got to Barafu High Camp. You hear conversations as you're sitting there resting. And the one guy was on the phone talking about how they got up there. There was a bitter wind blowing the whole time. You couldn't hardly stand up. I mean, it was freezing. And so we were all prepared to be bundled up to the nines, but we got up there. I was shedding clothes off at Stella Point because I was too warm. But we got lucky. The chances of you getting that you're more than likely going to be really cold up there than you are going to be warm like we were. So yeah, make sure you have that warm clothing. And this is something that and it came into luck with us. You probably do this yourself as a frequent traveler, is that on our carry-on luggage, we always carry an extra change of clothes in that. So like us, our baggage didn't arrive, so we had clothes to wear on the front end when we were waiting on our baggage. But some things we carry with us deliberately for that. So look at your stuff. What can you carry when you get there? If your bags get lost, you're not wearing the same pair of underwear for 2-3 days, that sort of thing. But no, really, really pay attention to that list because it's concise, and I think it was good, really good.
Now let's talk about weather. You can go do this from mid-June to mid-October. When did you go? And tell us what kind of weather. You told a little bit about the weather there overall on the whole trip.
We went end of June, first part of July. So we were on the end of their second rainy season, I believe it is. And we got lucky. Like I said, we got light showers if we had any rain at all. So for the most time, it was, in Arusha, it was 80 degrees or so. And of course, as you go up the mountain, it gets colder. But the start of the trip, we were in 75, 85 degree weather, sunshine. So for other reasons that as you get up, sunscreen's a must. So we got really lucky with our weather. It was basically blue skies the whole time we were climbing the mountain.
Nice. Very lucky. I'm going to ask a couple more quick questions, and then if we have a little bit of time, I'd like to talk about the safari.
Okay.
Or when they think Africa, they think bugs, and they also think shots. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Here's the thing. Once you get up past basically the forest zone or so of the mountain, there are no bugs. Now, that said, we made sure we had malaria pills. While it's not required, we are both already vaccinated for yellow fever. We did travel doctor medicine before we left to make sure we had the things, the altitude pills, the malaria pills, the proper shots, like make sure your tetanus is up to speed. We did get the option to get the pre-rabies shot, which we did not do, which I'm glad we didn't, because we didn't have any interaction with any animals that would have proposed a threat of rabies to us. And I think for the most part, you won't.
And that I made the same call when I went on safari too. I did exactly what you did. In fact, go visit a travel doc. I like Passport Health, but they're all over the place. They know, and they can advise you. So you should have.
Right. And that's the thing. Listen to what your travel doc says.
Okay, we have a few more minutes. Can you talk about the safari? Because you were there during migration time too.
We did. We made it all the way up to near the Kenya border and watched the migration at several points across one of the rivers up there. It is a great way to celebrate a climbing of Mount Kilimanjaro. Let me just say that. because I mean it's 6 days of just awe-inspiring views of the Serengeti and animals all over the place. We got to go to a Maasai village and meet with the family and talk to them a bit. And that was really eye-opening and impressive. And then we took off went to the Ngorongoro Crater, which is just, even if you don't do the safari afterwards and you have a few days in Tanzania after your mountain, I say go to the crater and then just enjoy it for the day, because you'll see all the animals you want to see in the huge crater.
And just so many that you just can't believe that there's so many animals.
Oh yeah. I mean, you look across that crater and it's just wildebeest and zebras and everything, elephants just as far as the eye can see, gazelles.
Although I did learn there are no giraffes. For some reason, they weren't able to get down the crater, but you'll see everything else. Right?
We did not see a black rhino in the crater, which is where they typically see them. We actually got really lucky, and we actually saw them on the Serengeti, which, according to our guides, was very rare to see. So we did get to see the big five. The last day, one of the last pictures I took was of a leopard that we finally were able to track down. But lions and rhinos and elephants, Cape buffalo and leopards, the big five, we saw them all. The only thing we didn't see that I wanted to see was a cheetah, but they're a little elusive, so I'm not too sad about it. But no, if you can do it, it's a great way to celebrate the trip, because it's an amazing once in a lifetime type of trip to do. So it's a great add-on, or even on its own, it's great.
Right. And and this is a level 1, because you're basically in a Jeep.
Yeah.
Driving around.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to let your body recover after the level 5 activity you just did.
Right. And for me, it was a little harder because, they pop the top on that Jeep they have so you can stand up and take pictures rather than taking pictures through the window of the Jeep. And since the speed limit in Tanzania is only 50 kilometers at the fastest anywhere you go, I spent the next 6 days literally standing up as we were driving everywhere. I didn't sit down for 6 days.
Oh, funny.
I was enjoying myself like crazy.
Now, did you go with Active on the safari?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So I didn't even know about Active when I went, which was 2014. So it's been a long time.
Well, they didn't do it yet.
Do you camp, or are you in lodges with them? I didn't have time to do any research on it.
3 or 4 of the nights you're in actually canvas tents out on the Serengeti. One night, the first night you're in a hotel, a really nice hotel, but then the rest of the time you're in canvas tents, and each tent is nice. It's got a full bed and an attached bathroom, because you're literally not allowed to leave your tent at night unless you get one of the people at the camp to escort you wherever you want to go. Because you lay in bed at night and you will literally listen to the lions grunt and roar on the Serengeti.
The animals are right outside your tent, but they don't come in them.
Yes.
No.
Well,
I'm glad Active gives you a bathroom or someplace to go. I went on a camping one, and they're like, you can't leave your tent. I said, well, I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom. As you can't leave your tent. So we cut a soda bottle and peed in that. And we had to come. I was like, I can't believe you haven't solved this problem before we got here.
Places Active take you on theirs are set up nicely. You don't have to leave your tent to use the restroom, and it's got a shower and a bathroom in your tent. Oh,
wow. No, that's really, send a picture of that too. I'll put that on the safari page.
Okay.
All right. Well, we only have a few more minutes left. So any final words of advice on traveling to Tanzania and Kili and safari and all that?
Oh, just be ready for an adventure. You do need to have some decent, you don't need to be a marathon runner or anything, but you do need to do some hiking before you go, because it is strenuous, but there's really no way you can practice for the altitude. But just be expecting to feel the altitude as you climb Kili, but just go with the mindset that if you listen to your team and you do what they tell you to do, you're going to make it to the top, and you're going to make it under your own power.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So what's next for Damon and his wife? What's on your agenda?
Well, we are planning our 10th anniversary down in Costa Rica, and we're planning to go see my niece in Germany and go back to my old stomping grounds in England for a while.
Fun.
So yeah, we have a pretty good year planned for the next year.
Oh, great. Well, I am so grateful you took the time to come on the program today. Super helpful in letting people understand if this is something they want to do or not. And actually, because I always thought, oh, I could never do that. You've kind of made me think, well, maybe I could, because it is gradual. So I'll have to think about whether I'm going to personally do that.
Yeah, I think you probably could.
But I know I'm getting gaiters, though. I've already made a note to buy gaiters for my next trip. So I appreciate that advice as well.
Good.
So we'll have all your photos on the website, as well as some of the links that we talked about. And again, Damon, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Okay, will do. Thank you very much for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed climbing Kilimanjaro. I know it was fun. I don't know if I can do it or not, but I am going to rethink that, because I think by going the Lemosho Route, which is slower and allows you more time to acclimate, that maybe I can do this. I'll see how I do when I'm down in South America, because I'll be hitting the highest places I'll have been to date. So I think I will put it on the shelf until I get back from that trip, and I'm going to reassess. We were running short on time, so we didn't delve deeply, or actually at all, into training for Kilimanjaro. Out of every adventure that I've covered on this podcast, this is the one that you must, with a capital MUST, train for. It's the only number 5 trip that I've ever covered on this show in the 5+ years I've been doing this. I've covered a couple number 4s like Mont Blanc, but this is at a different level, not just because of the duration of it, but because of that altitude. So I would recommend that you work with a trainer. I would recommend my friend and affiliate Becky at Trailblazer Wellness. I'll put a link in the show notes. Mention Kit and Active Travel Adventure, she'll knock 10% off. Becky can custom design a program for you, taking into account your current physical abilities, what equipment you have. In fact, you can do this for any trip, but I cannot emphasize more strongly how important it is to properly train for this trip. You want to summit, you want to succeed, and it's only fair to yourself and the other people in your group that you go there prepared so that you can do this. I want to remind you too, if you do want to climb Kilimanjaro or go on any of Active Adventure's great adventure holidays, be sure to use my exclusive promo code. They go to some amazing places, and now that they've merged with Austin Adventures and Discovery Bicycle Tours, those tours are included too with that promo code. A lot of Austins tend to be more family-oriented, where Actives tend to be more adult-oriented. Actives is also more physical and more demanding physically than most of the Austin Adventures. So if you don't want something quite as hardcore, then perhaps the Austin Adventures is the right group for you. And Discovery Bicycle Tours, of course, does biking tours around the world. And you'll be not only saving yourself some money, but you'll also be helping to support this program at no additional cost to you, which is much appreciated. As a reminder, if you do use my links on the website, a lot of them are affiliate links, and some of those, again, at no additional cost to you, help support this program, which now that I'm retired, I really appreciate, because I'm really trying to hopefully get it to at least cover my costs, which would be great. So with that, let me let you go. I'm super happy that you joined me today. I really appreciate you listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.